didn't sleep very well last night at all. Yeah, I had a little coffee before I went to orchestra practice, so I wasn't, so I was um, a little bit amped up when I got home, and then Andrew went out and he put both dogs to sleep with me, and all they wanted to do was run around the place, so they kept jumping on the bed, jumping around my head, chasing after each other, so I couldn't sleep. Yeah, it's all right. But now I have my blackboard, my whiteboard it's called, behind me to do my teaching on. Yeah. So, all right. I'll talk to you in a little bit. Okay, bye.
time, so that's really good. And Andrew is coming along. He's starting to take classes to become an electrician, which I'm really supportive of for him. He's had kind of a rough go. They both did at various times, but Zach is now flipped into responsible adult mode. Andrew's not there yet, but he's getting there. And yeah, Zach is, Andrew had some trauma that Zach didn't have. Early childhood trauma that Zach didn't have. 18 months. 4. But the years basically 3 to 4 were very tough. Foster care, some abuse, some it was. Hello. Good morning. Say again. Yeah. 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 They what? Yes. Yeah. It's impossible for a young person to move out on his or her own these days. Rents are just like insanely high.
It's like it used to was. Isn't it so terrible when families live together? In the long run.
It's fine. I don't mind having them at home. Zach is rarely there. He's basically there to sleep. Yeah, I mean he's gonna be 29 this year, and so from my standpoint, he's doing what a 29-year-old should be doing. I mean, he goes out with his friends. He's got a nice girl that he sees. He goes here, he goes there, he does things, and he comes home to sleep. And so Andrew says, "Well, Zach is never here." Yeah, I'm like, "He's not supposed to be here. He's 29 years old. He is learning how to live his life. It's okay. It's good. I support it."
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I lived a lot of life till I was about 25. Then I decided I had to learn how to get integrate into society.
Right.
And you never paid it. That's scary.
Well,
never know
basically,
You know what? I don't want to make it.
my family
Huh?
moved to Northern California, and when I was 16, and then they moved back to New York when I was 18. I stayed at the private boys boarding school in Northern California. So, starting at 18, I was completely on my own, and I loved it. I was super independent. So,
May I add one word? But you were responsible.
totally,
See, there's a difference.
totally.
You understand what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, I had a job. Totally responsible. I look at, the generations now, the younger generations. I can't judge them by what I did or what we did. At 18, I had 2 jobs. Plus, I was going to Stanford, and it was it was different for us. I couldn't wait to get out and start working and making money. And my second job was I was the guy who pushed the mop around in the supermarket. Clean up on aisle 21. That was me. Nowadays they look at that like, oh, that's like beneath me. I'm not going to.
But you know what?
I was thrilled that they were paying me, and I got a paycheck. I didn't care, mop, whatever. It didn't matter.
Rabbi, with all honesty, being really honest, I taught largely minority students, a lot of Hispanics. They were from a time, we're not talking about Jewish kids who come from privilege and have money and have cars.
Yep.
Okay? We're talking about reality.
Yep.
And I always tell that to my grandkids. I
They
said,
were very hard,
You know what? Really hard.
really hard. Yep,
So,
absolutely. They work very
and
hard.
and they have to be responsible.
They have to take care of their family, they have to put food on the table for their family. I agree with you 100%. They work very hard. Okay, everybody, have a seat. We need to get started because I have a lots of stuff to go over today. So, so the last 2 weeks, we have spoken about God. And we talked about some ideas within our tradition about God. Now, this week, I want to begin some other ideas where God is involved. That's why it's theology, things where God is involved. And so today I want to talk about the mitzvot. Okay. And we have to talk about being a chosen people, and we have to talk about the afterlife, and we have to talk about angels and demons, and we got tons of stuff to talk about. But today we're going to start mitzvot. Okay. Now you hear this term all the time. Oh, she or he, they did a mitzvah. It was a mitzvah that they did it. And in common parlance among Jews, when you say, it was a mitzvah, what was it? What would you say? It was a good deed, exactly. That is not what a mitzvah is. A mitzvah is a commandment. So, let's say someone goes to the hospital to visit someone who is sick. And we say, what a mitzvah you did, right? Yeah, you did. But guess what? God commands us to do that. God tells us we have to do that. God tells us that we have to be good people and visit the sick and comfort the bereaved, all those things. So it is a good deed that someone does that, yes. So, for instance, I'll embarrass you. Evie does a lot of things for a lot of people. She brings food, she visits, she does all these wonderful things for people. That makes her a wonderful person. It makes her someone who does many mitzvot, right? Who does a lot of good deeds. But really what's going on is that it makes Evie a really good example of someone who is fulfilling God's commands. So, I just want to point that out early on. We hear it all the time. It's a mitzvah.
But I am breaking one because I'm driving to take the food to Pancho.
It's okay. It's okay. She says, I'm breaking one because I'm driving to take the food. It's okay. So I just want you to understand that. The way it is used these days all the time is, he or she did a good deed, meaning that he or she went above and beyond and they did something nice for someone. But I do need to let you know ahead of time, God commands us to do these things. Say again? So it's not a mitzvah. Yes, it is a mitzvah because you are fulfilling a command by doing a nice thing. In other words, God commands us to do nice things for people.
How do you translate the word mitzvah?
How do you translate the word mitzvah? Commandment. A command. Okay, so you'll see up here, good deed versus command. All right. In our tradition, we have 613 total mitzvot, 365 negative mitzvot. You will not do this. And 248 positive mitzvot. You will do this. And according to the rabbis, Rabbi Simlai taught there were 613 mitzvot stated to Moses in the Torah. consisting of 365 prohibitions corresponding to the number of days in the solar year, and 248 mitzvot corresponding to the number of a person's limbs. In other words, the bones in their body. Rav Hamnuna said, what is the verse that alludes to this? In other words, he said, well, what? How do you know that? 613, 365, 240. How do you know that? It is written, Moses commanded us to the Torah, an inheritance of the congregation of Jacob. The word Torah in terms of its numerical value. So in Kabbalah, we have something called gematria. And you add up the numerical numbers of the letters in the word, and they add up to a certain number. The number that Torah adds up to is 611. In addition, there are two other mitzvot. I am the Lord your God, and you shall have no other gods. The first two of the 10 Commandments that we heard from the mouth of the Almighty, for a total of 613. So that is what our tradition says, that if you count up all the mitzvot in the Torah, it's 613. All right. The first person to outline all of them was Maimonides. He tells us what the first one was, be fruitful and multiply, and all the other 613 that come in. All right. So traditional Judaism does not understand the idea of rights. It only understands obligations to God. So, the question, if you are a traditional Jew, if you are an Orthodox Jew, a Hasidic Jew of some kind, the only question you have to ask yourself is, what is my obligation to God in this matter? The easiest way for me to explain this to all of you is, in traditional Judaism, a woman does not have a right to have an abortion. Absolutely not. Why? Because it's not her body. It's God's body. It's not her body. It's God's body. It's on loan to her. Just like with the men, too, our bodies are on loan to us. So she doesn't have a right to decide what happens in God's body. She only has obligations to God. And her obligations surrounding abortion are, if the baby is if the pregnancy and or the delivery is going to kill her, she must have an abortion. She doesn't have a choice. She must, under Jewish law. Her life is more important than the baby's life. If she just made a mistake one night and got pregnant and decided, you know what, I just don't really want to be pregnant. I don't want to have a baby. She may not have an abortion. She may not. And then there's a whole bunch of gray areas in between where an abortion would be permitted under certain circumstances. So, traditional Judaism does not understand any personal rights. I have a right to do this. When the Enlightenment comes along, can someone tell me anything you know about the Enlightenment? Okay, so the Enlightenment was so huge, you should know a sentence about the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment happens basically between 1650 and 1750. Good, it emphasized rational thought. From Descartes to Voltaire, basically, 1650 to 1750. And basically, What the Enlightenment did was it sent an earthquake through Europe. If you lived in Europe at that time, how did you make decisions about your life? You went to the church and you asked the church hierarchy, whom can I marry? What is my life supposed to be? What should I do? How do I lead my life? Etc., etc. What the Enlightenment said was, you as individuals have the authority to make decisions for yourselves. Now, that seems like a crazy idea for us in 2025, because of course I get to make a decision how I want to lead my life. But guess what, folks? It was not like that for centuries. People didn't get to make the decision for themselves about how to lead their lives. So you can imagine, once people get the ability to decide for themselves, the right to decide for themselves how they wanted to lead their lives, that was huge, huge. So personal authority then supplanted the authority of the church. You would still go to church for religious reasons, of course, but you had the ability to lead your life the way you wanted to, and you had the right to do it. So the idea of rights comes along during the Enlightenment. All right. So in our tradition, we have two different kinds of mitzvot, two different kinds of laws, two different kinds of commands. God commands us ethically, and God commands us religiously. Now, those of you who attend Friday night service, you do this every Friday night. You talk about this when you sing or you say Ahavat Olam. Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael. Okay. Chukim u'mishpatim otanu lemadeta. Okay. Chukim and mishpatim. Those are the two kinds of commands, the two kinds of laws that we have in Judaism. Anyone know the difference? Okay. Chukim, that's plural for chok. Mishpatim is plural for mishpat. So, a mishpat or mishpatim are laws that we understand. These are ethical laws we get. You shall not murder. Remember, it's murder, not kill. It's murder. You will not steal. You will not commit adultery. You will not... These are ethical laws that we all agree society has to follow in order for it to be a civilized society. We can't all be running around trying to sleep with our neighbors' husbands or wives. We can't go around stealing things from people. We can't go around murdering people if we want to have a civilized society. So these are rules for a civilized society. So then what are chukim? A chok is a law that we don't understand. It is a law like kashrut. You will not eat pork. Why not? I have no idea, and nobody else does either.
I thought that our ancestors figured out there was a bug.
So Evie says, I thought our ancestors figured out there was a bug. So one could argue rationally, well, uncooked pork has trichinosis. People were dying in those days from uncooked pork. You can guess and conjecture all you want. But the answer is we don't know. If that was the answer, how come most of the world eats pork and they're not dead?
They cook it right.
We don't know. God says there are certain foods we cannot eat and certain foods we can eat. And that's just how it is. We don't know why God said it, period. God said, don't mix wool and linen. Shatnez. We don't know why. Probably because the Canaanites were doing it, and God didn't want us to replicate Canaanite behavior. Probably. A lot of the prohibitions are don't do what the Canaanites are doing. But the honest answer is we don't know. God says you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. I have no idea why. Maimonides says it's because it was a Canaanite fertility ritual, and so we shouldn't do what the Canaanites do. But the honest answer is we just don't know why. So traditional Jews observe the Chukim simply because God said to do them. If you are a traditional Jew, an Orthodox Jew, Hasidic, whatever, you observe kashrut, you keep kosher. You don't spend a lot of time asking, well, why did God say I can't eat pork and I can't have shrimp? You just do it because God said to do it. All right, so that is the difference between chukim and mishpatim. If you are a Reformed Jew, the chukim are voluntary. That was the big reform of Reformed Judaism. If you want to keep kosher as a Reformed Jew, and it's reform, not reformed. As a Reformed Jew, if you want to keep kosher, good. If you feel it adds to your Jewishness, good. Keep kosher. If you want to observe Shabbat and not go out, not go shopping, not spend money, not do whatever, and violate the terms of Shabbat halakha, then good, you should do that if you feel it adds to your Jewishness. However, if, as a Reformed Jew, you don't feel that it makes a difference one way or another, then you don't need to keep kosher. That was the big reform of Reformed Judaism. The chukim become voluntary, not obligatory. The ethical commands, the mishpatim, are still in force for all Reformed Jews. No Reformed Jews say it's okay to commit adultery or steal, right? No Reformed Jew says that anywhere.
They're more so inclined.
Huh?
I made a joke. I said they're more so inclined.
Okay, so that is the difference between the chukim and the mishpatim. All right. So when we talk about the mitzvot, the commandments, it presumes the fact that we are in a covenantal relationship with God. What does that mean? It means that God says, I will be your God, and we say, okay, good, we like that. We'll follow your rules. That's what it means. So, if you are a traditional Jew, then you follow all of God's rules. That's the point. God says, I'll be your God if you follow my rules. And we say, okay, we'll follow your rules. Now, are those rules, did we agree to those rules? Were they voluntary? We agreed to them? Okay. When did we agree to them? And where? At Mount Sinai. Yes, at Mount Sinai. Okay, so let me read you from one of the Midrash. When God, who is everywhere, revealed himself to give the Torah to Israel, he revealed himself not only to Israel, but to all the other nations as well. In other words, God said, look, I have this Torah, all of you here, all the nations of the world. What do you think of this? Okay. At first, God went to the children of Esau, and he asked them, will you accept the Torah? They said right to his face, what's written in it? We don't want to accept something that we haven't read. What is it exactly we're agreeing to? You shall not murder. And they replied, oh, Master of the universe, this goes against our grain. Our father, whose hands are the hands of Esau, led us to rely only on the sword, because his father told him, by your sword shall you live. I'm sorry, we can't do that, because we go around murdering people all the time. Okay? As an aside, Esau gets such a bad name, such a bad rap in our tradition. And what did he do that was so bad? Right? He's the hairy one, and he's strong, and from the text, he doesn't seem like he's the brightest bulb in the chandelier, but he's strong, he's a good warrior, he's a good hunter. And then we have Jacob, that our tradition portrays as kind of a mama's boy. And so really the question we should be asking ourselves, who is better to take over the clan after Isaac? Is it Jacob or Esau? And the answer is Esau, for sure. Because what does the clan need from a leader? Someone who can make sure they have food and someone who can protect them. That's Esau. That is not Jacob. That's Esau. Jacob tricks him out of the birthright. Esau goes off angry, and Jacob takes over the clan. So what did Esau do that was so bad? They meet later on, and Jacob is deathly afraid that Esau is going to kill him. Esau says, hey, bro, what's happening? Haven't seen you in a long time. How's everything going? And they leave, everybody's okay when they leave. So,
I never thought Esau got a bad rap.
oh, he does, because Esau becomes synonymous with Rome.
I know.
So, yeah. Okay, so God first goes to the children of Esau. Then what happens? Then God went to the children of Ammon and Moab, and he asked them, will you accept the Torah? And they said right to his face, well, tell us what's written in it. And he said, you shall not commit adultery. And they replied, oh, Master of the universe, our very origin is adultery. Remember how we get the Moabites and the Ammonites, right? For Scripture says, thus were both the daughters of Lot when child by their father. Sorry, we can't do the Torah. Then God went to the children of Ishmael, and he asked them, will you accept the Torah? And they said right to his face, what's written in it? He said, you shall not steal. And they said, Master of the universe, it's our very nature to live off what is stolen and what is acquired through assault. Of our forebear Ishmael it is written, and he shall be a wild ass of a man, his hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him. We cannot accept the Torah. So Ishmael is who in our tradition? Who is Ishmael? Say again? The first son of Abraham. Remember, Abraham has a son with Hagar, his handmaid, because he can't conceive with, Sarah can't conceive. He has a child with Hagar. Then God grants Abraham a son with Sarah, and then Abraham sends Hagar away with Ishmael. And Ishmael becomes the forebearer of the Ishmaelites, who become Muslims. So Ishmael is the one who is the ancestor for the Muslims. For in Islam, it is Abraham who is about to sacrifice Ishmael, not Isaac. Okay, so there was not a single nation among the nations to whom God did not go and speak, as it were, knock on its door, ask whether it would be willing to accept the Torah. At long last, God came to Israel, And they said, we will do and hearken, na'aseh v'nishma, which is what we said at the base of Mount Sinai. We will do it, and we will understand it. Of God's successive attempts to give the Torah, it is written, the Lord came from Sinai. He shone upon them from Seir. He appeared from Mount Paran and approached from Ribot Kodesh. Lightning flashed at them from his right. Okay, so we Jews accepted the Torah sight unseen. Remember, all the other nations said, first tell us what it is, and then we'll decide. We Jews said, yep, we'll take it. Now tell us what's in it. Right? So we accepted voluntarily. We accepted voluntarily. Except that there is a minority tradition among the rabbis that we did not accept voluntarily. The mitzvot were forced upon us. How could that possibly be? The Gemara cites additional homiletic interpretations on the topic of the revelation of Sinai. In other words, the Talmud has some other ideas. The Torah says, and Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet God, and they stood at the lowermost part of the mount. And the word that they use is the same root from tuchus, underneath. Backside, underneath. Okay? So they stood underneath Mount Sinai. Okay. Rav Abdimi Bar Chama Bar Chasa said, the Jewish people actually stood beneath the mountain. So God raised the mountain up, and here are all the Israelites. Whoa, that thing's pretty big. Okay, God, what's going on here? And God held them hostage, and he held the mountain over their head. And the Holy One, and the verse teaches that the Holy One, blessed be he, overturned the mountain above the Jews like a tub, and said to them, if you accept the Torah, excellent. If not, it will be your burial. From there is a substantial caveat to the obligation to fulfill the Torah. So God said basically, let me make you an offer you can't refuse. Here is my Torah. Accept it or I drop the mountain on you and squash you. And the Israelites all said, oh, yeah, good. We're good with this. Oh, we're good. No problem here, God. No problem here. Okay, that's a minority tradition. Now, does anyone see a problem with that minority tradition? The problem is really clear. If you were coerced into doing something, do you really have to do it now? I was forced to do this. I don't want to do this. So, the rabbis answer. From here, there is a substantial caveat. The Jewish people can claim that they were coerced into accepting the Torah, and therefore it is not binding. Look, I was forced to accept all these laws. And because I was forced to accept all these laws, I don't really have to follow them. Because somebody forced me. I didn't make this decision on my own. God blackmailed me. And so what do the rabbis answer? Well, even so, they again accepted it willingly in the time of Achashverosh, which we just read on Friday night. We read, this is at the last chapter, the Jews ordained and took upon them and upon their seed and upon all such as joined themselves unto them. So even if you say, well, we accepted this under coercion, so we don't really accept it, so it's not binding for us. The Jews re-accepted it in the story of Esther, according to the rabbis. And so, no, you don't get to argue that. It's binding for all of you. Good try, but not really. So, voluntary or coerced? All right. Okay, now, let's talk a little bit about salvation. How do Jews get to the Olam Haba? We're going to have a whole class on Olam Haba, Gehenna, all that stuff. But how do Jews get to heaven, basically, the Olam Haba? Say again, Judy. Study and prayer. Study, prayer, and good deeds. Yes, 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 yes. We get to heaven by virtue of our good deeds, of our following the mitzvot, following the commandments. So, if we go into Yom Kippur and we're judged on Yom Kippur, God looks down at Judy and says, okay, how were you at doing the mitzvot? Did you perform the mitzvot in your lifetime? Did you make an attempt to help people, to be a kind person, to treat people fairly, etc., etc.? Okay, you get to go up. And you get to go up, and you get to go up, and you get to go up. Okay. So in our tradition, we are judged by our actions in this world. Okay, I think we all understand that. And our tradition says that all Israel has a place in the world to come. Meaning that if you are a Jew, even if you go down for a while, eventually you're going up. And our traditions say that. Gehenna, which so many, we're going to learn this in another class, Gehenna, which so many people think of as hell, is not really hell. It's really purgatory. Because it says everybody who goes down eventually goes up. There are 3 exceptions. We'll talk about that another day. But basically, if you go down for a while as a Jew, eventually you're going up and you'll get to heaven. Okay, well, what about Gentiles? When God became the God of all humanity, all humankind. So remember that God starts as the God of the Israelites. And over the course of time, God becomes the God of all creations, of all humans. When that happens, the rabbis expand that all of Israel has a place in the world to come, to the righteous of all nations have a place in the world to come. So you don't have to be Jewish to get to Olam Haba. What do you have to be? You have to be a righteous person. What does it mean to be a righteous person who is not Jewish? What it means is that you follow the 7 Noahide laws. 7 Noahide laws? What's that? Okay, we have the 10 Commandments that were given to us in the desert. Gentiles have the 7 Noahide laws, which were given to them when Noah landed the ark. So way before we got our commandments, humankind got 7 commandments. And those commandments were, don't worship idols, don't curse God, you have to establish courts in order to judge people. You can't just take the law into your own hands. Don't commit murder. Don't commit adultery. Don't steal. And don't eat flesh torn from a living animal. Now, That's an important one because many of us don't know this. Don't eat flesh torn from a living animal. Okay, if the food you are eating is not kosher, what is it called? Treif. What is the origin of the word treif? Torn from a living animal. Because if it's kosher, what has happened? You have shechted it. You have killed the animal in the prescribed manner. Now, just so you know, another little excursus for a second. How do we get the rules for shechting? How do we know how to kill the animal? God didn't tell us how. The line in the Torah, the verse in the Torah says, and God told Moses and Aaron to kill the animal like this. And that's it. Like what? Like what? It just says, kill it like this. So the rabbis come along and save us. And the rabbis say, when God said this, this is what he meant. And the rabbis do that for a whole bunch of things. When God said this, this is what he meant. When God said, you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk, what God meant was, you will not cook meat and milk together, you will not eat meat and milk together, and you will not sell meat and milk together to a Jewish person. That's what God meant when he said, you shall not boil a kid in its milk. The rabbis do this for us all the time. All right. So, we were talking about salvation and mitzvot. The way that a Jew gets to heaven, we already sort of have it intrinsically because all Jews get to heaven, but the way we get there faster is by the observance of mitzvot. We act as good people in this world. That's a very broad interpretation. Okay? The Gentiles get to heaven as well. How? By the performance of the 7 Noahide laws. Okay. Now let's look at Christianity for a second, because here's a very big difference between us and Christianity. How do Christians get to heaven? Say again? Faith and faith and works. By believing in Jesus as the Messiah. That's how you get to heaven, by accepting Jesus as the Messiah and his message for humankind. That's how you get to heaven. Now, we call this justification by faith. So a Christian believes justification by faith says, if I believe in Jesus as the Messiah, I get to heaven. Okay, which is why on deathbeds, you have a Christian confessional where you say, I accept Jesus and then you get to go to heaven. We have the same kind of thing, except it has nothing to do with Jesus. We have a deathbed confessional. I've done it many times with people who are dying. It's called vidui. And it says that may my death atone for all of the sins that I have committed in my life. So, somebody who's been a very bad person on his or her deathbed confesses the vidui with me, and their sins are absolved. Okay.
I think the Christians have it better.
You think the Christians have it better?
Well, it's so much nicer.
It's so much nicer? So this is really an interesting point. No. You were joking, but it's a very important point for us to understand. So Evie says, I think the Christians have it nicer, or easier, or nicer, right? Why do you think Jesus' message was so popular after Jesus died? People converted to Christianity, pagans and some Jews, by the droves. Why? Because it was a nice message, right? What's going to happen when you die? If you embrace Jesus, you are going to go to the kingdom of God. You're going to be with Jesus. It's going to be unbelievable, way better than this life, where you could die from having a toothache. Versus Judaism, which said, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, and you must observe these commandments. And they're like, oh, let me see. I think I'll take door number 2, right? And it became such a problem that the rabbis at one point added a 19th benediction to the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah, the 18 benedictions. A 19th benediction against the Minim, the heretics. Who were the heretics? They were Jews who had been following Jesus. They were called Nazarenes, and who wanted to continue to go to Jewish services. And the rabbi said, oh, no. You're following the different thing. Out, get out of here. We don't want you. And then, over the course of history, the Christians said to the same people, no. You say you're Jews. No, get out of here. And they were left on their own in the middle of no place. They were called the Nazarenes. Okay. So, So we had these ideas within our tradition about how to get to God, what the Olam Haba, heaven. And in Christianity, what ended up happening was, if you believed that you got to heaven with faith in Jesus, you were following the teachings of Paul, which were embraced later by Martin Luther, who created Protestantism, who led the revolution to Protestantism. Or you followed Jesus' brother James, who said, you get to heaven by faith and your mitzvot, your works in the world. And so Catholics today believe you have to have faith and you have to do good works. Protestants believe all you have to do is have faith. And you'll find that in Paul's letter to the Romans. Just have faith in Jesus, that's all you need, and you go. And by the way, that was the breaking point for the Nazarenes. Jews who were following Jesus, Jews for Jesus, literally the first Jews for Jesus, believed they were Jews, and they were. They were Jews who were following their charismatic leader, who wasn't teaching anything un-Jewish. He was teaching Judaism. He just focused on some areas that the temple hierarchy didn't like. And Paul said, you don't have to circumcise your children anymore. And those Jews, the Nazarenes, said, wow, yeah, good. We don't like that circumcision stuff. I don't think any father in this room who had to watch the circumcision of their son would disagree with me. If we had the choice, we would all say, forget the circumcision, okay? My son was 18 months when I brought him back from China, and he had to be circumcised at 18 months. So I got the very best mohel and pediatric surgeon that I could find, and we did it. And my mom was down here with me at the time, thank God, because I refused to be in the room when they did this. And if you ever know of a child who comes out of anesthesia, a child who comes out of anesthesia sounds like this. It's horrendous. It's horrendous. Thank God my mom was here, because the surgeon gave my mom Zach, and she held him while he came out of the anesthesia. I had to get up and walk out of the room. I could not listen to him crying. I could not listen to him wailing. One of the worst days, one of the best, but also one of the worst days of my life. Okay. So Paul said, you don't have to circumcise your children anymore. And the Jews who were following Jesus, the Nazarenes, said, cool. Paul said, you don't have to keep kosher. You don't have to observe the laws of kashrut or the laws of Shabbat. Nice. Okay, we're good with that. All right, cool. You don't even have to believe in the Torah anymore. All you have to do is believe in Jesus as the Messiah, and you're good to go. No, we're not good with that. Nope, sorry. And that's when, it's very simplistic, but that's when the Jews who were the Nazarenes said, forget it. We're not doing this anymore. And Christianity became a Gentile movement after that. Okay. So 10:48. Jesus, I have no time. Yes.
I don't know if this is a ridiculous question, but did Paul identify himself as being Jewish?
Paul absolutely identified himself as Jewish. Paul absolutely was Jewish. Absolutely, because his name was Saul, and it was changed to Paul. Absolutely, he was Jewish. Okay, so let me finish with this today, because I'm already out of time. I don't even know where the time goes. I'm having so much fun with you guys. Okay, so all these laws translate under the rabbis into what we call halakha. And halakha comes from the Hebrew verb lalechet, which means to walk. So halakha is the way we walk, the way we go. And the verse from Torah, this is Exodus 18. Now listen to me. I will give you counsel, and God be with you. Talking to Moses. You represent the people before God. You bring the disputes before God and enjoin upon them the laws and the teachings, and make known to them the way they are to go and the practices they are to follow. So the way they are to go are the rules that the rabbis ultimately codify as halakha, the way we need to walk, the way we are to go. I'll finish with this. Normative Judaism, meaning that all Jews basically who identify as Jews understand what halakha is. For Reformed Jews, halakha is voluntary. For Orthodox, Hasidic, and conservative Jews, halakha is obligatory, it's mandatory. In other words, if you say you are a conservative Jew, you sign up you check the box that says, I will follow halakha. I will observe kashrut, I will observe Shabbat, I will do all the things that halakha says I'm supposed to do.
But in reality, Rabbi, that doesn't take place in the conservative movement anymore.
But in reality, that doesn't take place in the conservative movement anymore. So, the deal is, if you are living on the East Coast or if you are living in Montreal, your Judaism as a conservative Jew resembles much more to Orthodoxy than it does to Reform. If you are on the West Coast, we know very well conservative Judaism leans towards the Reform side. No judgment from me whatsoever. I don't care. I'm just pointing out a fact. But the conservative platform, meaning the rules of the conservative movement for all conservative Jews around the United States, say that if you're a conservative Jew, you agree to observe all the restrictions and all of the rules of halakha. I'm just going to leave it at that. Reform says those rules are voluntary. If you want to observe them, you may. If not, it's okay too. There are two groups. There are two groups that do not fall into the category of normative Jews, meaning Jews who are accepted as Jews everywhere. Okay? I should put a third one here. Jews for Jesus. Jews for Jesus are not Jews. Okay? They believe they are, but nobody who is Jewish accepts them as Jews. You cannot be Jewish and accept Jesus as the Messiah. Cannot be, period. In no way, no shape, no how. Now, one of my very favorite colleagues is a Messianic rabbi. He leads a congregation of Jews for Jesus. And he's a wonderful guy, and we have great conversations. We go to scholarly conferences together. We're in the same doctoral program at Spertus, et cetera, et cetera. He and I, we never talk about Jesus because we both understand, okay, we're never going to agree on Jesus' role in history. Never going to happen. But there's so much we could talk about. It's great. He's a wonderful person, a wonderful guy. Good rabbi, too, for his congregation. Okay, there are the Samaritans and the Karaites. The Samaritans who worship at Mount Gerizim in northern Israel, and the Karaites who follow another tradition within Judaism. And neither of these two groups accepts the rabbi's interpretations, accepts the oral Torah, accepts halakha according to the rabbis. They only accept what is written in the Torah. So when the rabbis say what God meant when he said this, the Karaites and the Samaritans say, what is written? Okay? What's the difference between the two? They are two completely different groups of Jews. The Samaritans keep to themselves. They have a very insular community. There are lots of Karaites. There are Karaites in Israel today, and there are lots of Karaites around the United States. There are large Karaite communities. They just simply don't follow the oral tradition. Then how do they slaughter animals? The Samaritans still do a Passover sacrifice. I do not believe the Karaites do, but they have replaced the animal sacrifices with other sacrifices, I believe. I'll look into that a little bit more, because remember, in our tradition, absolutely, they're still
I
around.
didn't know either of those groups were still around.
Oh, both of them are still around. Oh, absolutely.
Where do they live?
The Samaritans live right near Mount Gerizim in northern Israel, and the Karaites, as I said, live all over. They're in Israel, and they're all over the United States.
They're also in Eastern Europe.
And Eastern Europe, sure. I'll talk a little bit more about them next week, because I have to go now, because Susie is giving me the look that says, Rabbi, we're done. Okay? Say goodbye. Say goodnight, Gracie.
No, Mishpatim, I thought were your in-laws.
Mishpatim, that's mishpacha.
Oh, okay.
Not mishpatim, mishpacha. Okay, good. Have a great week, everyone, and I'll see you next week.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Ebby, please stop talking for a minute so I can thank you properly for bringing goodies every week now. Also, Rita needs a ride home after the second class to Burbank. Is there anyone who's willing to do that? You can talk to Rita. And number 3, I really would encourage you to come to the Sisterhood pre-Passover event that we are having a week from today in the evening. It should be a very, very nice evening. And there are people working very hard. We will be talking about how Passover was celebrated through the ages. We have 6 people who are going to make it very interesting for us. We ask if you want to come in costume, you can for one of the time periods. So if you want to know more about it, just ask me, but I can't encourage you enough to come.
What time is it at night?
It's 7:30. Thank you.
I got you.
to a certain point.
Mystery to me.
Really? Well, I can't. What is it you'd like to know how to do?
Everything.
Would you like to know?
That's the problem. I'm a failure because I want to know everything and I can never know
We'll
everything.
take it one thing at a time. Would you like to know how to follow a lecture from your house? That's an easy thing to do.
Not
I
really.
could show you in a minute if you want.
I have a computer.
Well, you could do it on your computer or your phone. It's the same process.
I don't want to know how my phone replaces my computer. No, I
No,
don't
but you
want
can
to
do
know.
it. You can do it.
In my mind, they're two separate things. You don't mix meat. You don't mix computer and phone.
When I don't attend the class, I follow it on my phone.
And when you're
And I
here,
can
you
show
can do
you.
the same thing. I have to pay attention.
Oh, then, well, no.
But then,
He was very good.
what are all those green things?
Oh, you were somebody's Wordle, not mine. Mickey Rudolph's Wordle. She had a hard time.
Mickey is in mine.
Honestly.
Huh?
I'm going, I do the Wordle with Marty and Mickey. We have a three-way.
What's a myrtle?
The Wordle.
Myrtle.
The Wordle? From
What's
the
a
New
wordle?
York Times. You would love it.
Is it a puzzle you have to figure out?
Yeah, because with
No, I don't-
language. Well, never mind, I won't force it.
Yes. All right. All right. Actually, I just had to ask for the space.
Where do you live?
I live in Woodland Hills. But she wanted to go to the space. Oh, that's mine. That was the first one they loved me. But I was
Right behind it.
turned on to know what they said. Would you vote to blow up your boy? Remember that? You know, there was this whole thing. I volunteered to do that.
Good, they should. He's an icon.
First officer in history. Been around a long time. Big point. Drive-in.
I think so. Well, a lot of it's drive-in, they're just delivering the car. They can drive in. But they have car service, car hops. Right, well, it's not, to me, a drive-in, they can put the food in your window. You know, they bring you the food and they sit it on the tray, and then you eat it on the tray.
No, it used to be that they used to bring it.
Right, they eat it.
Everything's whatever we're doing, someday it's not gonna be, some people involved. You'll have no idea what it is. It's fascinating. There's so much of the trade written.
All right.
What do you want to show me? Please take this.
The headline.
All right.
Yeah.
We are going to begin.
Did we make money on 40s down at 40 party?
Yeah, we made money.
Yay.
We did. We made money, which is good.
That's good.
All right. So, okay. We are going to be talking about Purim in just a moment. Specifically, it's just because Melinda is here. We'll start out with one piece of teaching of Talmud, and then I may end up with the other. We'll see how far it takes us, and we may dovetail into something we did last night. But
before I begin, I want to remind everybody that this weekend there's a special program. So we're trying to have more events on Saturday afternoons. And so every Shabbat that you come, there's always lunch. And along with the lunch, following the lunch, there'll often be a program, or coming up in the spring and next year there'll be programs. This week, during services, we're having a guest speaker, a woman by the name of Sharon Joy, who works for the Jewish National Fund. And she'll be talking about a project that we support here at the synagogue called Green Horizons. So you may have seen on some of our publicity, we do this thing called Operation Backpack, which is now transformed to Operation Backpack Israel. So in other words, we set aside money for educational purposes. We used to buy backpacks for kids here, but now what we're doing is we're sending the money to Israel to this program called Green Horizons, which provides after-school program to disadvantaged Israeli youth. So it's after-school programs for disadvantaged Israeli youth. It's called Green Horizons, and we support it. And this woman, Sharon, who I was in Israel with a little over a year ago, she will be speaking about that program and her work also with the Jewish National Fund. If you think the Jewish National Fund is only about, the little pushka where you put a little, a shekel in there and then you plant trees in Israel for bar bat mitzvahs, the Jewish National Fund is rebuilding both the south and north of Israel. And that's so important if you think about it, where people in the north were out of their homes for over a year, and then people in the south obviously are still devastated by the impact of the war. So an investment, everyone, when you move to Israel, most people live in the center. That's the center, that's the central urban hub of Israel is that, the Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and then their respective suburbs, and kind of like the path between both of them. That's where the action is. But there is a dedicated effort to build up the periphery, both the south and the north. And so that's through Jewish National Fund. And so Sharon Joy. Now, after that, this Saturday, so you'll come to the guest speaker or not, and then following that, there's Kiddush lunch. And then following Kiddush lunch, we're going to have a program we're calling Holy Disagreements. Okay? Holy Disagreements. Each time that we host this program, we will pick a controversial subject in the news, something that is a hot topic that we assume and know that there is diversity of opinions on. And we will set up the conversation in a specific way to facilitate constructive and civil dialogue. Instead of everyone hollering at one another, we want people to talk with one another and, most importantly, learn how to listen to other people's perspectives. So if you can follow the rules of a dialogue, there'll be specific rules on how to do this. The topic will be, is the two-state solution dead? So obviously the two-state solution, I'm referring to Israel and the idea that there should be, they should divide the land essentially between that should form two countries, Israel and Palestine, or what would be Palestine. And so the question that we're going to discuss is the two-state solution dead? That's something that is gaining a lot of, it's a big talking point in the news, and so I hope that you'll participate in it. Now, I don't actually think you're going to convince anybody, oh, I know, but I think it's more of an exercise for yourself and learning how to listen to other people. It's a spiritual exercise more than it is a political discussion about learning how to listen. So if you'd like to join us, you can come for all of synagogue or whatever part you want, No judgment if you show up for the bagels and then come to the program after. That's fine. We're okay with that for the Shabbat programming. Okay, so that is the Saturday. Questions, Adrian? Yeah, most Jews who've been displaced from their homes in northern Israel are back or are on their way back, unless their towns were, their homes were destroyed. But most of most of them have returned. That's my understanding, at least. Oh, really? Your family's still not back. Where do they live? Yeah. Yeah. So I guess it's, from what I heard on the news, people are moving back, but then their personal stories, and right, like if, great, you can go back to your house, the Army lets you, but there's no grocery store, right, or you don't have school for your kid, good luck with that. So I don't know so much about this, so it's a good, my cousins in the north are home. But again, I think we all agree that we want them to be home as soon as it's safe to be home. Okay. Other questions? Okay. So we are going to transition to Purim. Okay. And on Purim, you may say on Purim that, let's say you were, actually, let me pass this out first. We're going to get for my passed out volunteers. All right. Where did you pass out?
I-24, when you said that only 30% of the people. 30%. That's what they said.
30% return? Oh, okay. Yeah, this one.
This one?
That one's mine. Okay. So I want to begin. I hear I hear the peanut gallery. I hear everyone say it's too small, and I have to take my glasses like this too. So I hear you. My apologies. It's hard because anyway. I like this sheet and it's hard to manipulate it. But we're studying the Babylonian Talmud, the Masechet, or the piece of Talmud that is called Megillah. And it deals with a lot of the holidays, with the laws of the holiday of Purim, which we just celebrated last week. So here's my question. I say Purim. What do you do on Purim? What do you think you do on Purim? Raise your hand and tell me what you're supposed to do on Purim. Celebrate. Read the Megillah. Costume. What? Get drunk. Okay. Who else? Eat hamantashen. Susie, you said eat hamantashen. Matanot mishloach manot and matanot le'evionim, depending on who your neighbors are. So yes, okay. So let's go over some of them. So there is a commandment that you're supposed to listen to the Megillah 2 times, in the evening and in the morning. Great. There's a commandment that you're supposed to celebrate. So you're supposed to have a su'udah, like a feast, like a Purim feast. And so that is another commandment. Then there is another commandment that you are supposed to do mishloach manot, which is what we do here in the synagogue. We send you baked goods, and you're supposed to share them with your neighbors. It's unfortunate that it's different now, that society, everyone's behind fences, and I mean, I'm not saying that you don't need your fence. I'm just saying it's different than, where people used to knock on your door and you used to open it, and Alexa didn't answer it, and and ring, but anyway, now the only time that you open up this door for strangers is on Halloween, which is so weird. If we're talking about it's so Halloween. I love trick or treating with my kids. I really do. Because I love seeing everyone out in the street, and I love going to different people's houses, and I love seeing people's generosity of spirit, and everyone's in a good mood. The thing that I'd like to see Halloween without the costumes, though. Right? If it was Halloween, no costumes. Everyone just go around, just a day. Imagine that, a day where we just go to each other's houses, and you say, trick or treat, and you, hung out with your neighbors. Oh, you want a beer? You want a a cup of tea? Whatever it is. It's so nice. It's so sad that the people come to your door. You open their door, and they're still covered by masks, right? So it's the one day that we let each other into one another's lives, and we wear masks. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just cancel that part, because it's kind of the stupid part of the holiday anyway. And can't we just go to each other's houses? That would be really nice. In Judaism, we have a holiday like that. It's called Sukkot, right? Sukkot is supposed to be like that, where and it's really beautiful if you've ever celebrated Sukkot in Israel. Have any of you ever been to Sukkot in Israel? So they have these big apartment buildings in Israel, with several dozen families, let's say. And often what they'll do is they'll have a community sukkah. So sometimes a family will build on their mirpeset, on their porch. They'll build a sukkah, or if there's a courtyard, they'll build a sukkah. But often, the whole building will sponsor a sukkah, and people are in the sukkah. It's a community room, and people are hanging out with each other. It's really lovely. It's not Sukkot is not just a religious holiday in Israel. It's more of a national holiday. Everyone, lots of people build a sukkah. The Purim stuff with the costumes, where does that, so this is, Ken, I think, said this, something about, Ken, what do you say on Purim? What are you supposed to do? Get drunk. How many of you have that association on Purim that you're supposed to, l'chaim toivim? How many, any memories from when you were a kid, not memories when you were a kid, but later on? Okay, so where does that come from? What do you think? Let me ask you. Okay, so the question is, it really was just where do you, Adrienne was just saying her children who are Orthodox, they take this idea of getting drunk seriously. Sorry, I just called your kids drunk. Yeah. Oh, really? That too. All right, but we won't put that on the microphone. Okay, so this idea of if you had to explain to a non-Jewish person why we get drunk on Purim, I'm going to say this first. Parenthetically, I don't like it. I'm not going to. I didn't forbid it. I didn't say this year at our Megillah reading, oh, no alcohol out, but I didn't facilitate it either. So someone said, why was there no alcohol? And at the Purim reading, I went, I don't know, no one brought it. Like, I'm not going to go to the liquor store and be the one who's going to buy the alcohol. That's not kind of what I want to do. And I do think that I hate to say sound prudish here, but I often think that what ends up happening is the takeaway from young children is look at the adults act in inappropriate ways. And then we do a lot of like explaining about why, so-and-so who you know from synagogue is acting like a moron. And so I am not a big, again, I'm not going to, like, if someone brought alcohol, I wouldn't stop them. But it didn't even occur to me this year, frankly. Like, we had a beautiful Purim, celebration. The synagogue, the sanctuary was nice and filled, and with kids, it was lovely, and we did Wicked, and the cantor had songs and parodies, and it was great. And we had Hamantaschen, we had this, we had Andres made a meal. I think he forgot to cook dessert, but whatever. And it was a nice evening, but I didn't set up a bar, and I didn't have a drink. Okay, I wanted to ask a question here, and I'll get to you in a second. So my question is, I want you to do one of two things. I want you to either say, Rabbi, you're not, like, there's a value to the drinking, and defend that, or say, Rabbi, I think you're right. We shouldn't really do that. So go ahead. Take a stand. Take a stand. Okay. Right, so it is one vote with me. It says, Rabbi, the little kids, Shirley says, little kids don't need to see the adults in their lives inebriated. Okay, all right, so go ahead. Ernie, go ahead.
My day,
It is still your day, by the way.
the old days,
The old days.
after these services, we had Hamantash, and the older guys would have the schnapps.
Right.
With the Hamantash. And
Did they dunk it?
they dunk it, and then they had a couple of shots afterwards. And of course, the little kids are around, and they would try to give the kids a drink, to show them what it's like. And that's how I got some.
So, yeah.
Give it to your kids, and they would learn how to drink.
Oh, so Ernie actually makes a good point that maybe by introducing it to them, like, better for them to do it in the synagogue with the adults watching than behind the 7-Eleven, like at 11 o'clock at night, like it's in a controlled atmosphere. I actually do this with my kids as well. When we make Kiddush on Friday night, we use wine. And I said to my kids, fine, you can have as much wine. And then sometimes we use schnapps, not because I drink it, but we just have, like, people would bring us, like, alcohol. So we'll use schnapps to make Havdalah. And I let the kids try it because now they don't like it. It's going to save me a lot of problems because they're teenagers and they're like, oh, we don't like the way it tastes. I'm like, good, keep that in mind. Okay, so Ernie says, Rabbi, you're wrong. I'm just playing with you here, Ernie. But there's nothing wrong with a little bit of a few schnapps, and then also teaching a child how alcohol is part of life, and teaching a child how to constructively, to drink socially, kind of take the edge off, but not be a moron, is an important social skill. Okay, good. Anyone else? Bridget. You're against me. I love it. Bridget says, I'm the nicest person in the world, Rabbi, and I'm against you on this one. Bridget is like the nicest person, by the way. Go ahead. Yeah. Rabbi, don't be such a prude. Like, come on. Would it kill you to put a few bottles out there? That you talk a lot, you keep going on and on at services. They're not exactly short. Like, can we take the edge off here? And it adds to the atmosphere. I think Ernie said before, Purim's about celebration. And I told you, there's they were supposed to, Misha Niknas Adar Marbim Besimcha, the traditions teaches, which is from when the month of Adar comes, you're supposed to increase in joy. And alcohol can help, like, we all have our worries, and alcohol can help kind of, helps everyone. Okay, good. So that's another, okay. Anyone else want to weigh in on this hot topic?
Actually, I was, and I'm still a member in an Orthodox shul too, and they are discouraging every Purim. Before Purim, there is a note that let's not the kids see.
You act like a moron.
Yes.
Oh, good. So Susie was saying that at her other synagogue, which is an Orthodox synagogue, they, I guess it probably got out of hand. They send a community note telling the congregants to remember that kids are there and that you should drink responsibly. Okay, so that's an interesting thing, and I'm going to use this as a segue into our topic. Which rabbi is this?
Rabbi Kanevsky.
Rabbi Kanevsky is a nice man. Yes. Rabbi Kanevsky is a very nice man, but is Rabbi Kanevsky and his letter at odds with the Talmud or not? Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. Hot topic here at .rel. Let's talk about another rabbi.
Question.
Yes.
Is the drinking coming from the celebration?
We're going to go, the drinking's coming from right here. I'm going to show you.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
But just a little tidbit.
Yeah, go ahead.
I never drunk, except.
Sure you did.
I don't
Yeah.
know. So anyway, before I went for the honeymoon, my father put 2 schnapps out for my husband and him, and I drink one because I wanted to make a joke, and he got it. He said, "Oh, I forgot to pour for me." I got drunk from one. We missed the train.
For your honeymoon.
The real
You missed the honeymoon train because you got drunk on one shot. You are what they say in the Talmud. You know what they call you in the Talmud? A lightweight. All right. So what I want to do is, I was just kind of, being, there is, you may be not surprised to know that the idea of drinking comes from the Talmud. So it's a 2,000-year-old tradition. And then there's an interesting discussion from subsequent commentators on what the meaning of the Talmudic teaching is, which can lead us to different conclusions about the centrality of drinking as part of the Purim celebration. So look on page 233. It's the second to last page. It's the back side of the second to last page. So 233. So there's some interesting Talmudic teachings about different customs with Purim, and they're talking about Mishloach Manot, and there are different, kind of like tangential discussions, but here is a very important Talmudic teaching that you should not tell your dentist, the third to last paragraph. Room in the stomach for sweets can always be found.
I like that.
Okay. Page 233, the third to last paragraph. It says 233 on the... Okay, let me help you. Here. You want me to help you?
Yeah, I would love you.
So, if you are in the dentist, and the dentist says your teeth, they're rotting. Well, actually, the Talmud doesn't say anything about your teeth, but room in the stomach for sweets can always be found. That is, it became everyone's favorite Talmudic teaching, right? There's always room for dessert. It's in the Talmud. Okay. But now comes a more controversial discussion. Okay. The next thing is like, okay, that then there's just an accounting that Abaye Bar Avin and Rabbi Chanina would exchange meals together on Purim. So in other words, if I had to do Mishloach Manot, I could send my Mishloach Manot to Susie, she could send it to me, and we check, like it's a trade-off fulfills the Mishloach Manot. Because the question could be, if I send a Mishloach Manot to Bridget and she sends it to me, do they cancel each other out, or do I still get mitzvah points? And so the Talmud says, no, you get mitzvah points. Bridget can send it to me, I can send it to her, and it still counts as my mitzvah. Very good. We were all very worried about that. Okay, it kept us up at night. Okay, now the last paragraph. This is where we say, okay. Amar Rava. Rava says, Mechayev inish livisume beforia Adelayada ben Aror Haman levaruch Mordechai. A person, according to Rava, is obligated to become intoxicated on Purim so that he doesn't know Adeloyada, he doesn't know ben Aror Haman, between the curse of Haman, levaruch Mordechai, and the blessing of Mordechai. So the Talmud is saying here, on Purim, you're supposed to drink until you don't know the difference between the curse of Haman and the blessing of Mordechai. How do you read that verse? How do you read that commandment? Tell me, and if there's any, what's the obvious way of reading that? Get drunk as a skunk. Susie, before her honeymoon, had one schnapps. She missed her train for her honeymoon. But it's saying, was that enough according to the Talmud? No, she's got to drink 3 more shots until you don't even know the difference between the train and the tracks. It's not that you missed the train. You wouldn't even like, whoa, like that, one of those things. It seems that you forget what a train is. You forgot,
Actually, we went on the wrong train.
You went on the wrong train.
Yeah, I couldn't remember.
Oh, you couldn't remember. Okay. Well, this is saying so the obvious reading of this is to get shikker. Like not just a little bit, not tipsy, not a glass of wine. It's saying get like wasted, is what my generation used to say. Get wasted. And so that's what Rabbi Kanevsky was writing about, right? His letter to the community said, don't do that. It's okay. But the Talmud says to do it, seemingly. Is there anyone else who can offer a creative way of reading that verse? Is there other ways that we could read that commandment? Until one does not know the difference between the curse, the aror of Haman, and the varuch, the blessing of Mordechai. Go ahead, Shirley. Go ahead. Okay, so it seems like, wait a second, they're not, Shirley's pointing out, wait a second, this is saying something about the moral spectrum, and it's demanding that we lose our bearings on the spectrum of morality between one radical side, Haman, a genocidal maniac, and Mordechai, a tzaddik, a righteous person who saves the Jewish people from destruction. So it's saying, it's not just like, oh, it's saying it's radical and it's moral. It's not just like, oops, I'm picking on you, sorry. I ended up on the wrong train, but it's saying I don't even know the difference of whether I'm doing right from wrong. Radical wrong and glorious right, and I don't even know the difference. So what Shirley is alluding to is that one way of reading this is not that we were all kids who had, the first time that we tasted alcohol and we went too far with it. We all have our story, right? This is saying, no, it's beyond that. It's so much that your judgment, it's not that you're a little like, woo, and you shouldn't drive your car, or that you go on train A instead of train B. It's like you don't even know the difference between one of the worst people in history and one of the heroes of Judaism. Dull, not even dull, like obscure your moral sensibilities. Okay? Anyone else? Go ahead.
Lose the preconceived notions.
Yeah, lose your preconceived notions is what Susie just suggested. Okay, good. Is there any other ways of reading this? Nadia? Oh, good. Now, I'm going to explain now. Nadia makes a suggestion that some rabbinic commentators make. I think that Rabbi Kanevsky? Yes. The rabbi, which one? Kanevsky. That Rabbi Kanevsky is on to something. I'm going to get to Nadia's comment in a second. That I think that Rabbi Kanevsky, who writes a letter to his shul telling them, don't act like a moron on Purim. He probably wrote that a little bit more diplomatically, but don't be an idiot. Is expressing a discomfort that even the earliest commentators on the Talmud feel, and that is that really, do we want to do what is the obvious meaning, which Shirley did such a beautiful job of explaining? That this is like an obscuring of your moral compass. And so then Nadia says, Shirley, you're my good friend. There's an easier way. I don't even know if you two know each other. There's a nice way of being able to fulfill this. It's not saying, Nadia is saying, and other commentators have suggested this, that it's not saying that I don't know good from evil, but rather I'm like just in the moment of the day. That I am just like the whole story of Purim is everyone ends up like in an opposite place. Think about it. Vashti starts out on the queen of Shushan, and then she's bounced. At best, she's banished. But she's banished. I think she's okay. So that Vashti. Haman starts out here. He thinks he's going up here. He ends up down there. Esther starts out down here, and same with Mordechai, and they end up going. They stop over here where they think like they're that she's the queen, but then she even goes higher when she squeals out on Haman. So everyone in the Purim story, it's about the whole book is like a roller coaster of the fate of these characters. Everyone ends up in a different place. The only person who doesn't end up in a different place is Achashverosh. He's an idiot when we start, and he's an idiot when it ends. And he's like nonplussed by the whole thing. First of all, the story is so farcical. Like, can you imagine any ancient ruler, especially of like a great Persian empire, holding on to rule, like not getting toppled by acting as he does? I mean, the whole book is almost read as a
Fairy tale.
What it?
Fairy tale.
Yeah, like a fairy tale. What I said last night in my Talmud class is that the book reads. You remember like the old Batman that used to be on TV with Adam West? Yeah. Do you remember that? It kind of like reads like that. It reads like a comic book, right? It's unidimensional. The characters are very kind of exaggerated, but that's how it reads. And so anyway, the only person that remains the same is Achashverosh. And that's he's a zero. He doesn't know what's going on in the beginning, and he doesn't know what's going on at the end. And everyone he's being used, and he's being manipulated, and he's a tool. He is not a character, right? He's being instrumentalized for everyone else's purposes. And the only thing that he's interested in is sex, alcohol, and parties. That's it. He's like a typical man. But he's like a very simple guy, He wants to have parties. He thinks it's a great idea to ask his wife to get, naked and dance for the whole party. That goes well for a relationship. He's a very kind of he's a barbarian. I mean, he really is just a very, he's the only one whose fate doesn't change. And what Nadia was saying is that maybe this roller coaster is too much. To live on the roller coaster is too much. And so maybe we need times in our lives where we're kind of a little like Achashverosh, where we're just existing in the moment. And we're not changing, and we're not scheming to go up or falling down, but rather we're just kind of and so maybe drink until you don't know the difference between the aurora of Haman and the blessing of Mordechai, is that the world demands serious engagement from us, and sometimes it's exhausting. It's a common reaction. Look, the Democratic Party now is going through an identity crisis. After it lost the election, it's going through an identity crisis. And there's a great feud within the Democratic Party right now about how they should engage the new administration. How should they engage President Trump? And so there are those who feel that they should be oppositional, right? Stand strong against everything that the new administration does. And there are those who think pick your battles. But what they've realized, everyone, and I'm not taking a side here, I'm just telling, this is fact, everyone agrees on this, is that they realize that a lot of people are taking a breath from politics. And so the atmosphere that surrounded early 2017 is not the atmosphere anymore. The same type of robust oppositional protest that was opposed President Trump in his first administration is simply not there now. And so that's really left the Democrats not sure what to do. And think about your own friends or people who are just I need a break from the news. I needed a break. I started watching, I'll tell you, the stupidest thing. I don't really watch any TV. And once in a while I watch a ball game with my kid. But I started, I was very civically and politically, all the podcasts and all this. After the elections, I stopped everything and I started just watching YouTube videos about coffee. I'm being serious. I would watch, my favorite is this guy, James Hoffman, who's this English gentleman, and he speaks with an English accent, and he talks about coffee with an English accent. And I found myself sitting on my couch at 12:30 at night, watching hour after hour of a British man talking about coffee. Not because, and this is getting back to Nadia, not because it riled me up or spoke to my passions, but it was the only way I could fall asleep.
You don't have to think.
You don't have to think. It just lets you be. And so maybe that they're saying is that sometimes in the world, woo, just like Haman and Esther and woo, up and down and all around, and that is too much. But you drink so that you just can like be in the moment, that you can be in shul with your kid and, you know, with some friends, and you're just there. And you're not thinking like, it's like, you know, the people who take themselves too seriously, or you ever go to a professional conference with someone and you're like, can we not talk, you know, when I go out with other rabbis, I'm like, can we not talk about our synagogues? Or can we not talk about like a sacred, like let's just talk like human beings. Let's talk about like things that we like doing, that we don't like doing, that we like stupid stuff, or even like real, but like let's not talk about shop. And maybe like this is what Nadia is saying, there's a different way of reading this, is it's not so much get so drunk that you don't know the difference between good and bad, but saying get drunk, like drink a little bit to take the edge off so you're not living in the woo, woo, woo. That's one school. Go ahead, Shirley. Yeah. Or you see even, yeah, Shirley, right. So I could also just give the opposite sermon. No, just not for you, the opposite sermon that I just gave. The opposite sermon is put down your alcohol because we're not engaged enough. Anti-Semitism is real. There are significant and real problems both on the American political left and the political right. Our colleges are a mess. There are people out there who hate us and want to do bad things to us. And we have different ideas about how we should take our steps, what steps we should take forward. So now is not the time to just be and to watch coffee podcasts and to drink a little bit, but rather put the stupid coffee podcast away, read a book, write a letter to a congressman, go to a protest, demand action, but now is not the time for just being. You can make that case. Then there's a few other things because I got to run. Another way of reading this, that you shouldn't know the difference between the Aror of Haman and the Bracha of Mordechai. Well, one commentator, I just read this in the bottom, one commentator says that there are, it's literally, you have to know the difference between the gematria, the numeric value of the phrase Aror Haman, and the gematria, the numeric value of Baruch Mordechai. And if you add up the numeric values of the two, which takes a little while, they're actually equal. And so what the text is saying is you have to drink enough that you can't do those calculations easily. In other words, this is a little bit of you don't have to drink that much at all. Just a little bit, because no one who drinks, like, you take one little, like, you'll be like, I'm not doing that kind of math. So it's one commentator tries to suggest that knowing the difference between the Baruch of Mordechai and the Aror of Haman is not that much at all. So there are different ways, and then there are other people who say, no, it's to get like, so there's sort of like three ways of reading this. The obvious way is to get really shikar. The second way to read it is to excuse yourself from the situation. And the third way of reading it is just a little bit of alcohol, so you can't make these complicated math equations. So just drink to take a little of the edge, a little bit. Just to drink a little bit. So 3 different readings of this Talmudic teaching of drinking until you don't know the difference between Adelo Yada ben Aror Haman Ula Baruch Mordechai. And 3 different interpretations, a lot of little sermons, and some coffee with some British guys in it, all today at MID. All right, everyone, thank you so much for having me this evening, or this morning, or whatever it is. And I got to run to a meeting. Have a great day, everyone, and don't drink too much.
You could keep them until you can't read them and you're drunk.
Well, you can't read them anyway. The fridge is full.
Sarah will be here this Saturday.
What's that?
Sarah is home for Shabbat.
Oh, great.
I have to say, there's a lot more alcohol involved here than in New Jersey when we went to synagogue.
Oh, right.
You would never see alcohol.
That's so interesting. I would think just the opposite. From my experience, just the opposite. Yeah.
We were very surprised when